Good evening. Hello. Um, this is our second webinar, and today we have Sarah here, who is the founder and CEO of BeMe. She's going to tell us about BeMe, and we're going to ask questions along the way. So whenever you're ready, Sarah.
Okay, I guess the floor is mine. Well, how exciting. I'm really happy to be with you and share with your families a little bit more about BeMe. I'll give just a little bit of background about myself. So I have a background in clinical science and in working with platforms that gather data and analytics of data. So I've worked with a couple of companies in executive roles on that front. I also have a background in human biology. So, I think even much more important in this context is the fact that I am also parent to an autistic child. So, I am mother of a 12-year-old girl, and it's really my journey with her that made me feel compelled to found BeMe. So with my background and the needs that I saw and the many other parents and professionals who I was interacting with saw, I thought I had to found BeMe. I had no reason not to. We saw that there indeed is it's a human rights issue that we have something to support families like BeMe is providing. So I can perhaps share a little bit of content here. And then I think the most interesting thing probably would be to show the platform.
What do you, before you start, what was the issue or like specific area that you were frustrated with that guided you towards creating a platform like this?
Right. Well, it's really about the need to be able to take a holistic approach to care. So one that is shifting the standard of care to be one that is very much needs based. I think we're well on that path, but there is a lot more that we can do for our families and to support the entire care team. So, what that means for us is combining not just behavioral data and behavioral information, but also medical and environmental factors. So, we want to look at an individual as a whole and add as much information as we can to be able to support that individual on an ongoing basis. So that's what we've done with our platform, actually. This will make much more sense, I think, in a couple of minutes. But to start, we developed the platform based on lived experience. So, not just mine, of course, but we worked with about 250 families in the first year and a half of the company to really understand what their needs were. Were they experiencing in their daily lives and what was going to help them? We also worked with over 30 different domain experts to develop the platform. So these are some of the key challenges that families told us about that they were facing and that they were looking for support with. So organizing care, therapies, and interventions, effectively utilizing our limited resources, so both time and financial, having a place to store and organize everything. So, as caregivers to autistic children, we amass a lot of documents, binders, and boxes full of things. And often they've got valuable information in them. However, they often die a quick death because they get stored away and they don't get action. So it's important for us to put everything in a place that we can easily find it and share across the team. So this other need of basic communication and sharing across the team and integrating everyone across the team is very important. And in fact, we call this a contributory model. So if we don't have the parents connected with the babysitter and the respite care worker, the occupational therapist, the speech therapist, the EA at school, the medical doctor, the medical specialists, then we have a massive missed opportunity for connecting the dots in having everybody looking at the same picture, setting goals together, and moving in the same direction. And then this last point here is, how do we know objectively what is helping our children? What might be having little impact, but maybe we're putting thousands of dollars into? or at worst, what might be harming. And so that's what we're doing with the platform is we're bringing in this scope of information and utilizing technology to be able to do that and make sense of it so that we kind of have a guidebook for each individual. So this visualization here looks like a lot, and it's because it is. And the reason that it's a lot is because this is the scope of information, ideally, that we're going to be looking at when we make decisions as a team and to see how things are changing on an ongoing basis. So, being able to take an iterative approach to care. So, all this data here in the platform, we never want any family to be overwhelmed. They can enter what they wish, what they feel is most relevant for that individual. Um, the different color coding in here is about the way that the data comes into the platform. So these, what we call them modules that are coded in yellow, involve some logging by the team. So someone on the team is entering data. And we've designed it so this data can be entered in seconds. We worked with different experts and we asked them in each one of these areas in their practices, what would they like to know? So in an initial appointment and then in an ongoing basis, what would be that ideal set of information for you so that you could help support that child and you could put in place protocols and interventions. So, for example, we have a module called the Bio Diary. And the Bio Diary we developed with a pediatric gastroenterologist and a urologist. And we asked them, in your clinic, what would you want to know? And so often, families can get sent home with papers, or they could also just be providing their own descriptions, of what's gone on with their child, maybe when they have an appointment every 3 months with that professional. But now what that professional can be armed with is a log of information of a lot of different things that went on with the child since they last saw them. So not just maybe what they would like to see or what they typically are sending home with families, but a whole scope of information that can help them. So that gastroenterologist could look at this bio diary information, but they could also look at things like what the child's eating, what their physical activity is like, if there are changes in their sleep, all kinds of different things that could help them evolve how they work with that child.
I have a question. So now, this is amazing. Like as a speech therapist, I worked in an elementary school, and it was always I always wanted to know what the other providers were working on, what they were doing, what the progress was. And it was always kind of hard getting the contact information, getting connected with the PT that maybe was from an outside provider. So having it all unified in one place is definitely a great way for carryover and for people to discuss what they're working on. So if I was using this platform as the speech therapist, would I have access to the gastroenterologist's notes and what like the medical data there, or?
So that primary caregiver is the account owner, and they actually control the permissions of who is able to see what.
Okay.
So ideally, they're going to open up quite a bit of information because it could be of a benefit for you to see, notes, etc., from these other professionals, of course. Ideally, you would even have the opportunity to talk to each other in the platform.
Yeah.
I myself, with my child, I actually was the one to have to organize conference calls if I wanted the different people working with my child to connect with each other. And in one case, they were just down the street from each other. So
Wow.
it's something that just doesn't happen the way that we need it to happen. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So
I also think, I also think that as a speech therapist, I don't always think, oh, it'd be interesting to know what their other special, like obviously OT and PT for me are those are like the common therapists that I would work with, but we never really think about all the other potential people that we could be connecting to that are also working with the same kids that could offer very valuable insight that you might never even think of would be helpful, but it's all connected. So
Absolutely. And, often professionals, we hear all the time, they're a bit of at a loss, maybe if there's a change and they don't know what might be behind that, right? But
Mhm.
if they can see maybe there was a medication change, or maybe they moved homes, all kinds of different things could be happening that could be behind that. So this is a way of sharing that type of information with the team. Um, Another piece in the platform is about co-occurring health conditions and how they may present in an autistic child. So we know that there are many co-occurring health conditions that are more prevalent in autistic children. Gastrointestinal health issues are at least 4 times more prevalent, other health issues as well. But often they can look different in an autistic child. And so it is often the case that some of these conditions, they are misdiagnosed or they go undiagnosed. And so what we've done in the platform is we have put from clinical studies, clinical signs and symptoms of what can be co-occurring health conditions as they may present in an autistic child. So just by putting those clinical signs and symptoms, so behaviors and physical symptoms in front of the team to track against, then it can be elicited that perhaps additional diagnostics are required. And then that's where we need to start. If the child has a serious health issue that's not been diagnosed and they're in pain, and compound that with the fact that they might be limited speaking or non-speaking, that could be a huge impact in terms of executive functioning, self-regulation, ability to focus in school. And so these are things that we see as key in putting in front of the team. And then it's about tracking and testing across these things on an ongoing basis, and then implementing changes together as a care team. So when you look at different challenges that the child is having as a cross-disciplinary team, what can you do about that together? So yes, I think it's probably best maybe if I start to just show it to you. We are developing the platform so that it is a lifetime companion. Right now, we are working with children up until the age of about 18. But we even do have autistic adults in the platform logging things for themselves, so self-monitoring. And that's something that we'll continue to develop as we progress the platform.
Awesome. Is this an app?
It is. So it's what we call a responsive web app. And that means that you can access it online from any device. And it looks a little bit different depending on the device that you're using to access it. So if you're accessing it from your phone, your mobile device, it looks different than what we're looking at right now. So more streamlined. And that's where the majority of the data is being entered. But it can also be used on a tablet. And that's often, out on the floor, in schools, for example, and then on a desktop. So this is the desktop version that we're looking at. It's more often used if you want to dig into the reports because it's just a little easier to look at it on a desktop than on a mobile phone. So we're in the app now. Can you see good evening, Dania?
Yep.
Okay. So if you were coming into BeMe for the first time, there's a short setup process. And that can take anywhere from about 2 minutes to 20 minutes, and then you're in. So we do have to ask a few questions in order to do some of our calculations. So the child's age, their height, their weight, this sort of thing. But the goal isn't actually to gather an extensive clinical history there. We actually ask about what happened over the last 3 days. So we ask, how did the child sleep? What did they eat? What were their activities? Did they have any symptoms? And the goal is to show families right away how this data can be used. So what are some of the different insights that you could see that could be valuable to you in your day-to-day? The other thing that we do in the setup process is we start customizing the experience in the app. And so the things that you're most often entering are always appearing on top. The modules that you're using the most often always appear on top. So it learns based on how each person is using it. Okay, before I show quickly a couple of the ways for logging, I'll mention that we do have caregiver well-being in the platform. And the reason that we've included that is because studies have shown that outcomes for the child are often very closely correlated with the caregiver's well-being. So a primary caregiver's well-being, their mental health and their physical health.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so many of the things that can actually be tracked for the child could be tracked for the caregiver. So always kind of putting it top of mind that your well-being is very important and definitely has an impact on the child. Another thing that we've included in the app is a tracker that the child can use themselves. So this is a very visual piece that we've started in a simple way, and we actually keep making it more and more simple because of feedback from families. But it's used often with limited speaking children. And this is where we're asking questions about things like, if they feel pain or discomfort somewhere in their body, point to where. And that is, we use this in my house all the time. That can be very valuable to know, as a starting point, what might be going on with the child if you start to see they're getting agitated, etc. So that's another piece that we have in the platform, is being able to get data directly from the child. And we have different ways that we'll be doing that in the future too. So I could show you a couple of the ways that data is entered here. We have what's called real-time logging. So if something happens, you can go and log it right then. Or for most of these modules, you can go back in the past and you can pick a date that you want to log for, and you can log what they ate maybe 2 days ago. But things like the child's mood, we actually don't allow for that because we want an accurate timestamp of that so that we can see that in combination with other things. We also have these journals, these morning and evening journals, because we saw families who would log once a day, and they'd log sometimes quite a bit in that one time, but they did it all in one chunk. So what we did is we put together a set of questions from these different modules where we know things are often correlated for autistic children, and we at least just ask those questions. So you can get a reminder to answer a few of those things at once. And even if you don't do it, both 2 times a day or every day, then we're still getting good, consistent information that you can track over time. So I'll show you one module for data entry, and then I'll hop over and show you what some of the reports look like. I'm going to show you BioDiary because we already started talking about BioDiary. And this is the one that we worked, in this case, it's with a gastroenterologist. So there's a set of questions in here, and they range from descriptive answers to, direct answers like choices. So here we're using something called the Bristol stool table, which is something that gets sent home with families. We've incorporated visuals where we can in the platform. There are also these descriptive questions. Anywhere where there is open text, you can speak to the app. So it converts your voice to text. And then some of the modules have room for notes too, where you can just speak to the app. So that's, as I said, the longest one. Most of them are just 1 or 2 questions. All the data that ever gets entered in one of these modules gets stored. So you can then email this, download this, and share this with any professional that it might be relevant for. But ideally, you're just going to invite them into the platform. So you can go and you can invite anybody that you like. I don't have permission in this account here, so that primary caregiver would need to, but family members, professionals, etc., that are working with the child, they just get an email, they set their own password, and then they're in to work and collaborate as well.
So only the caregiver is kind of the member.
So that primary caregiver has the power. They are able to control who has access and what access they have. Yeah.
Is there a limit on how many people can access?
We do not, and we've actually had accounts where they've had over 20 people in the account, and we encourage that because the more people who are entering information, the better. Even somebody like my brother, who only sees my child maybe every 2 weeks to once a month, he has a different lens on things for her, so he's going to see different things. And so we encourage even people that aren't frequently with the child to also be able to log what they're seeing. because that can be helpful. So no, we don't limit the number of people that are in the account. Okay, so I'll quickly show you some of the more powerful reporting that we have in here. So with that data that you're entering, we produce some fancy reports. This one here is about what the child is eating. So we are able to enter what we use. We use something called natural language processing, and that's fancy words for just being able to say what the child ate. So you can say something like peanut butter sandwich and a glass of orange juice. And then we are able to return what typically is nutritionally contained in a peanut butter sandwich and a glass of orange juice right away. So this can be used different ways depending on who you are. So if you're, say, the parent, you could be looking at, where's my child in terms of sugar consumption even that day, or where are they at in terms of hydration. And so then you can set a notification for yourself and anyone working with the child to say, oh, my child's got under 50% hydration, or the child has reached 80% of the sugar consumption for the day. So then they can do something about it. So very practical things in day to day, but then a professional can come in here and they can see out of the diet 32 different nutritional elements. So you can see maybe the child's not getting any, magnesium out of their diet, or folate, or vitamin A, and or many different things that could be having an impact. So then they might suggest a change to the diet, or maybe nutritional supplementation or something like that. So these things often occur. A lot of autistic children kind of limit what they eat. We had a period of time where it was chicken fingers and French fries, and that was about it. So you want to know what that impact might be, and that whole team can, play a role in maybe helping the child try different foods and things like that. So this is meant to really foster a team approach and collaboration. So I'll show some of the insight reports. This is an example of different things that we can report on based on looking at those different categories of data together. So we've started here with correlations where we know from studies that these things are often having an impact on an autistic child. So here we're looking at the sugar that was consumed versus the frequency of episodes, so these periods of overwhelm in a child. Or we can look at things like sugar consumption versus the number of times that they woke up during the night, or sleep duration versus physical symptoms that day or behaviors, the mood of the child versus what they were doing, the caregiver's mood versus the child's mood. Yep. Yeah, often correlated.
Yeah, definitely.
Here we have episode tracking, so by type, meltdowns and shutdowns, and then things that were behaviors, say, before and after an episode. We do really involved, well, it's actually very simple for the families, but things like supplement tracking and medication tracking. So, getting that paper off the fridge where you're putting all your check marks about what the child's taken, and putting that somewhere where it's really easy to use. So with the supplement tracking, we wanted to ask families how they did this and how we could make it super easy. So if the child's taking the same thing every day, you don't even need to log anything. It just automatically logs it. But if something changed, they miss a dose, they change a dose, they try something else, then you can log that. And so then in here, you can look at the supplements that are taken, as an example, versus behaviors that day, or physical symptoms that day. And if something changes, it shows up in red. So this is, again, that whole care team that's working with the child, they might know, hey, well, why has something changed pretty significantly over the last 2 days? They could go in here and they could start to look for things like this. Here we have our biodiary reporting, and things like constipation. Obviously, that can have a pretty significant impact on a child. So we're looking at things like the type of stool versus the number of episodes, the type of stool versus the child's mood. So hopefully this is giving an idea of the power of the data.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, the return, even if you enter pretty minimal data, you can get some very good insights. We also have other collaboration tools in here, like being able to see who on the team has logged what. And then, you can drill down into that. We also have care team files. So here is where anything related to the child can be stored. And then we have things like smart chat. So you might say, hey, occupational therapist, check out minute number 5 of this video and let me know what you think, as an example. Um, and then we also have a knowledge center, which we developed, which was a request of families. So they wanted a place to start if they saw something, say like that low vitamin A. What might be the impact in my child? And then curate this so you can reach out to different support groups, providers, even autistic adult bloggers we have in here, and you could learn about what they're doing and get engaged with them too. So this community aspect is something that we've always had in mind. I'll stop there if you have questions or there's anything else you want to see.
Well, you showed a lot. It was very informational, and I'm just thinking on how it would apply to how I would use it, and it's very very cool, and I think definitely something that is lacking in the professional world, specifically working with children with autism. Have you connected with schools or like kind of, because this would be perfect for that setting and what I'm seeing?
I actually just spent a good part of last week with an amazing school where we onboarded all of their staff, and they had have a very multidisciplinary team. So different types of therapists, educators, support workers. And I spent 3 hours with them just going through the different kind of cases and how they would like to use the data. So things like getting a notification when the child's dropped off at school where you know how they slept the night before. So you can set something like, notify the team at school if the child slept less than 5 hours the night before. So then they can take, more sensory breaks, etc., and make accommodations throughout the day. Or those things like, what the child's eaten, if they've taken a new medication. We also have a chat function in here too, so you can share things like that. Like I just shared that my daughter is starting taking swimming classes. So then even something like that, oh, well, she's taking swimming classes. Well, let's talk about that and do a craft about it or learn something about swimming. So it's really a way to be able to share a wide range of things that never get communicated or very often don't get communicated. And a way to be able to automate some of that too.
I'm thinking, just knowing the families that I've worked with, it's often very hectic, busy, and logging something in the moment might seem kind of hard to do. But I'm sure that obviously with all of this happening, that people are finding the time and being able to log. How has that process been? Has there been any feedback or anything like that?
Absolutely. This has to fit into the daily flow of life. So the last thing that you're going to do if your child is having difficulty, if your child is overwhelmed, is pick up your phone and log in, right? I'm not doing that. So you can do that later. You can set up even a reminder, at the end of the day to log things like that. Or those are the types of things that are in the journal. So, like I said, most things you can go back and log. They don't have to happen in that moment, but it's things like, say, the mood, emotions, the child self-reporting about their energy level and things like that, that we want done ideally, at in the moment. But otherwise, things can be logged going back in time. What's really important is this getting everybody in the same place, because we see that the family's behavior drives like the school's behavior. The school's behavior drives what gets how the family's interacting with the platform. So it's that keeps them going, because then they just start to make recommendations. Let's try this and let's see what the impact is going to be, for example. So we do have accounts where it's just a caregiver in the platform, and some of these people, they're very diligent in what they're doing, but it gets to be a lot easier. And there's a big benefit when you've got more people in the platform. So that's a big piece of keeping up using BeMe.
Yeah, definitely. I'm sure that there's within the process that there's reminders sent, like, can you please
You can set
log or
reminders for pretty much anything that you want. So
yeah.
things like, maybe it's a reminder for mom to log breakfast and lunch and dad to log dinner, or maybe a reminder for older brother to log activities in the evening. So you can spread it out among different people that are with the child as well.
hmm and what is the like target age that this would be used with? Like up until what age? And then could it switch to when if it's a more higher functioning adult, could it switch to then they become their own caregiver and they use the platform to connect themselves?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You've got it. So that's definitely a big part of what we're building. So right now, the questions, as you saw, some of them are designed to be answered by a care team member for a child, on behalf of a child.
hmm
But we actually have autistic adults using BeMe to self-monitor because
Yeah.
they didn't want us to wait to build that version. So it's a little awkward because the questions are phrased for a child, but it's the same information, right?
hmm
So what we want to do is build out these other kind of, for transitions in life and phases of life. So up to, adolescence, transition to adulthood, and we know that we're going to need different content depending on the stage of life. And so that's actually something that we're working on right now, is identifying organizations to co-develop these things with.
hmm
So, somebody brought up a valid point. 14, you might want, say, a sexual health module. There are different things that are going to apply at different times. It's definitely a big gap with these transitions because often the care team changes, and that can be very difficult. That can be, a risky time. So to enable these transitions, you want to be able to share as much history, as much data, etc. Also, the case for getting funding. So often a certain threshold of need must be exhibited in order to get funding. So
hmm
the reports from BeMe can be very valuable for as a part of these applications. So that's something, as a use case that we're also working on for the platform.
hmm Another random question. Is it only in English or are there other languages?
Currently, it's only in English, but we get asked this a lot, and we've got different partners that are their platforms, of course, are available globally. So that's something that we've designed the platform to be able to do, and we hope that it may not be in 2024, but in 2025 for sure, that it'll be available in some different languages.
Yeah, no, I think it's something that's very valuable and could be valued everywhere. So,
Absolutely, especially in, underserved geographies where maybe a
yeah,
family just doesn't have the opportunity to interact with a professional team. But if this is a way that they can get started on their own, they can try different things themselves and they can be informed, then that is a huge part of the vision. We want to serve and help as many families and individuals, of course, as possible.
yeah, definitely. I think it's definitely helpful. um, I think I've asked throughout all the questions that came to my head. This is I'm very excited to hopefully use this in the future and see this with some of my students, and I'll definitely recommend it as I see fit. I currently work in a high school, so not exactly the population, but in the future, I definitely hope to use it myself.
Great. Well, you know where to find us.
Yes.
And families can, of course, find more information on our website, and we have different discounts available too.
Thank you so much, Sarah. It was very informative and interesting hearing about BeMe, and I wish you luck and
Thank you.
success.
Thank you, and my pleasure.
Thank you.